Yeah, the topic we have here is retaining wall in construction. So, retaining wall is one of the structures that is being constructed to actually help to retain, either to control erosion, to control landslide, and all of that. So, we'll be taking a look at the importance of using retaining wall in construction. So, we'll also take a look at the definition of retaining wall, then the reasons why retaining wall is being used in construction, then the uses and application of retaining wall. Then we'll also take a look at a typical retaining wall structure. You understand? So we'll look at a pictogram of a retaining wall and the parts of the retaining wall. So let's take a look at the definition. A retaining wall is a structure designed to hold back soil or other material at different elevations. So we are considering to hold back the soil and also the elevation of the soil. So it prevents soil erosion, maintains slope stability, and creates level area on sloping sites. The retaining walls are essential in land development, infrastructure projects, and building with basement or split level. So basically, if you are building your basement or constructing your basement, you actually need to use your retaining wall. Not all the time, but in some cases where the pressure is high, so we can actually build a retaining wall to hold the pressure before you dive into your basement construction. So we'll take a look at the key reasons why retaining wall is used in construction. So the first one is to prevent soil movement. Then the second one is to create usable space. Then improve safety and stability, cost effective solution, durability and longevity. So let's quickly take a look at prevent soil movement. So retaining wall actually helps to hold back soil and prevent landslide, erosion, and soil collapse on sloped and uneven terrain. So when you are constructing either your basement structure or your residential building or commercial building on a sloped or uneven terrain, you tend to make use of your retaining wall. So this actually helps to prevent soil movement, right? So you won't have a landslide, right? So there are different kind of retaining wall. So the type of retaining wall you're going to be making use of, it will now be depending on the nature of the soil you have. So the next point is create usable space. So retaining wall actually enables the creation of level area for construction of roads, then landscaping and other development. So it actually helps you to reclaim your land so that you'll be able to use it for other construction activities, be it your road, your landscaping and other structural development. Then the next point is improves safety and stability. So retaining wall actually helps you to improve safety and stability. So it actually helps you to improve the safety of the soil and the stability of the soil, right? The safety of the building itself, then the stability of the soil, right? So let's take a look at it. Enhances overall slope stability and protects nearby structure and property. So if you have properties that are behind areas that are prone to landslide, so you can actually make use of your retaining wall to improve the safety and the stability of the structures that you have around such areas. So we'll take a look at the cost effective solution. Retaining wall actually help to reduce excavation and grade costs by allowing soil retention instead of large scale earth removal. So instead of you to do a whole large scale earth removal, whereby you tend to use your excavator, you start excavating and all those things, you can just make use of your retaining wall to actually help to prevent the soil movement, right? We tend to reduce excavation, then it also helps to reduce the grading cost. So this actually helps to allow soil retention, instead of large scale earth removal. So we'll be looking at the durability and the longevity that is being felt by the use of the retaining wall, because retaining wall actually helps to properly design and construct wall, right? Provide long-term performance with minimal maintenance. So with your retaining wall, it actually gives you that long-term performance, because it's going to be a strong concrete structure, right? And so it's going to give you that long-term performance, and you're going to have minimal maintenance, right? So this actually is very, very important in construction. So you see different kind of retaining wall structures in construction, be it on your bridges, your abutment structure, your retaining wall for your basement and the likes of that. So we'll just take a look at the uses, and application where we make use of our retaining walls, and where we also apply retaining wall. So retaining wall is used to stabilize slopes and prevent soil erosion. So it helps to create level platform for building and landscaping, right? Then support soil in basement below grade structure. So it actually helps to support soil in basements and below grade structure. Then it is used along roads, highways, and railway embankments. So for your road embankments, for your railway embankments, for your roads, highway embankments, you tend to make use of your retaining wall. Then control water flow and protect against flooding. So you can actually use it alongside with your drainage to control water flow and protect against flooding. Like for areas where you have large erosion coming up, you can actually construct your retaining wall structure. Then you backfill, you compact and backfill to bring it to the road level. Thereby it actually helps you to control water flow and protect against flooding. So it's also used in bridge abutments and approach embankment. So it actually helps you in your bridges, that is the abutment. Then for your embankment, then even in your dam construction, you can still make use of your retaining wall, because it's very, very useful in your dam to control the volume of water and all those things. Then we also use retaining wall to enhance aesthetics in gardens, terrains, and outdoor space. So in outdoor space, during landscaping, you can actually make use of your retaining wall, because this actually helps to enhance the aesthetics in the garden and your terrain. Then it also helps on your outdoor spaces. So because it actually provide that protection, right? Protection and safety, and actually also help to reduce the flooding, right? So in your construction of your drainage, there are some areas where you notice that the pressure on this side is going to be very, very much. So you can actually construct a retaining wall to hold such area from pulling in or pulling out. So we'll take a look at a typical retaining wall structure. The first thing we have is backfill soil. So compacted soil placed behind the wall for support. So after construction of a retaining wall, you do a little bit of backfill. You compact, you backfill, you compact, right? So that it helps to give support to the retaining wall. Then we have drainage layer. So permeable material that allows water to flow and prevents pressure buildup, right? Then we have filter fabric, which prevents soil and particle from clogging the drainage layer. Then we have the whip hole, allows collected water to escape and reduce hydrostatic pressure. Then we have reinforced concrete stem. This is the vertical wall designed to resist lateral soil pressure. Then we now have the footing base, which spreads the load and ensures stability of the waste. So this is just a retaining pictograph for a retaining wall. So with this picture, it actually gives a clear and guidance on how a retaining wall looks. So retaining wall protects so basically, a retaining wall protects, supports, and creates opportunities. A well-designed wall ensures safety, stability, and long-term performance. So, these are the things you should be looking out for. The first thing is the safety, then the stability and long-term performance. So there are different kind of retaining wall, as I've said earlier, but we just give this one, as a whole summary of how the retaining wall should look like, the components, the key reasons why we make use of a retaining wall, then the uses and application, area of application where we tend to make use of a retaining wall.